Hey guys, so today we're going to be talking about CPU, GPU temperatures and some cooling tips from me. Let's get right into it.
Again on the track.
So the first thing I wanted to get out of the way is what's the maximum CPU temperature, GPU temperature. So the CPU can run up to 100 to 110 degrees, and ideally it's recommended to keep it under 80 degrees. GPU is pretty similar. The max temperature is 100 to 105 degrees, and ideally it should be kept under 85 degrees. But most experts can tell you that the most ideal and sweet spot of temperatures is between 60 to 70. Then I wanted to talk about how cooling works. The most basic principle is that cold air is taken in and warm air is taken out. So the most important factor about cooling a PC is the ambient temperature. So when you talk about ambient temperature, it's the temperature of the air inside the room. And when we look into servers, the recommended temperature is between 10 to 20 degrees, and for gaming systems at our home, the recommended temperature is between 20 to 27 degrees. My opinion on this is somewhere in the middle. I believe your room temperature should definitely be between 15 degrees and 24 degrees. That's the sweet spot where you get the most efficient cooling, where it's not too cold and it's not too warm, and everything just works fine. So why is that the recommended temperature? So it all comes down to water, because whether we use air cooling or water cooling, essentially there's water used in both of them. And water is most dense at 4 degrees Celsius. So anything hotter than 4 degrees or cooler would water would expand and would dissipate more heat. So bringing temperature down between 10 to 4 degrees gives you the least benefit. And if you go into negative temperatures, there's a chance the water might freeze and not cool at all. So essentially anything below 10 degrees is not even worth the effort, and it's only used in extreme conditions when using liquid nitrogen to cool, or using extreme ice cool water to do benchmarks. It's just something that you can't use on an everyday system. Then I'm not gonna go over how many fans you should use, what type of cooling system you should use, because that's something everyone has covered extensively online. But what I want to cover is the effects of fans. And I recently ran this experiment in my own home. I was doing some benchmarks, running stress tests and monitoring temperatures. And I decided to turn on the ceiling fan. What immediately happened was that all my temperatures went up between 1 degree to 4 degrees. And I'm going to link the numbers up above here. So then I started researching why that might be the case. And the simplest reason is that my system has an exhaust fan up top, which it uses to push out hot air, and the basic principles of convection, where hot air naturally also travels upwards. Now, when I turned on the ceiling fan, it started moving air downwards and blocking essentially all that hot air inside my system, making my system hotter than it actually is, or than it should be, precisely. Also, the way how fans work is electrical energy is changed into kinetic energy, and during that change there is some inefficiencies which is dissipated as heat. So essentially fans make your room hotter, even if they don't make you feel it that way. it does raise the temperature of the room. And that's not just true for the ceiling fan, it's true for every fan in your system. Whether it's the intake fans, exhaust fans, radiator fans, GPU fans, it's all going to follow the same principle. The thing that might differentiate those fans from a normal ceiling fan is the type of bearing that is used. So a normal fan or a ball bearing generates a lot more heat than a hydraulic bearing, and a magnetic bearing creates the least heat because it's the most efficient bearing out there. Now, why am I talking about fans creating heat? So think of it this way. You live in a place where your room is already somewhere around 40 degrees. You turn on the fan, you crank up all of your fans in your system to keep your PC cool. In about an hour, 2 hours, or maybe 4 hours of your gaming session, your room's going to be at least 10 to 20 degrees hotter, and that's going to impact every component in your system. So rather than doing that, it's always better to have a lower room temperature using an air conditioner. So rather than investing extensive amounts on water cooling, having like 8 fans in your system, and ramping them up all to the max and still experiencing 70 to 80 degrees, one air conditioner can make a larger difference than all those combined. So it's always better to think what's more needed according to your situation. So someone living in a colder environment would not benefit from an AC at all, but someone who lives in Pakistan or hotter climates, it's much better to invest in an AC than water cooling or custom loops, and it definitely has a better result as well. Okay, so we have a few things left now. So now let's talk about positive and negative airflow. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have already covered this extensively. To summarize it, the benefits of a positive airflow is that the extra gaps you have in your cases, air is taken out of them because more air is taken in, and the exhaust fans are not taking out all of it, and so it escapes through those minor gaps. The benefit of that is that you have less dust accumulating in your system. So now that we're talking about dust, let's also talk about the scenario we were talking about before. If you live in a warmer temperature or in a warmer climate, you ramp up your fans to cool your PC. The faster your fans revolve, more air is circulating through your system. That also means more dust is going in and out of your system. So over time, a lot more dust will be collected, and you probably have to go through, change your thermal paste, service your system. And also, fans have a certain life where it's a certain number of hours or a certain number of cycles. The faster you run them, the quicker the chances are of them failing and you buying a new one. So that pretty much sums up everything I researched, I found out, I tested, and if you have any questions, do let me know and I'll be glad to help.